Your Excellency, President Kolinda Grabar-Kitarović, Honorable President Aykut Eken, Honorable FICAC Directors, Your Excellencies, Honorable colleagues, distinguished guests, welcome to this FICAC online event. It is an honor to have you with us today. Thank you for keeping your cameras on and your microphones off. It is important to have the opportunity to see each other. In its 40-year-long history, FICAC, the World Federation of Consuls, has succeeded in not only bringing consuls from around the world together and improving their status and effectiveness, but also in engaging with major international bodies like the United Nations, the European Union, the Organization of American States, and others, in its pursuit of enhancing the status and effectiveness of consuls. FICAC has numerous committees. Among the most active ones is the Women in Diplomacy Committee, headed by Honorable Gönül Eken, and we thank them for organizing today's event. We are happy and honored to have with us Ms. Katja Gersak, Executive Director for the Center for European Perspective in Slovenia, who will be the moderator of today's event. Ms. Gersak.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary General. It's great to be here with you. I'm honored to have been given this role. It's great to see some familiar faces, and thank you for joining us in such numbers. First, I would very much like to invite the Honorable Aykut Eken, the FICAC President, for the opening message. Aykut, the floor is yours.
Dear Excellencies, honorable colleagues, dear friends, it is a great honor and pleasure for me to welcome the former President of Croatia, Her Excellency Mrs. Kolinda Grabar-Kitarović, as the guest speaker of our first FICAC Presidential Summit. The globe is facing a difficult time. Everything is changing. Our daily life, education, work, trade, travels, and even politics. These changes have created new business models and entirely new industries. As FICAC, our main objective is to share experiences and coordinate efforts to enhance their status and effectiveness and to bring together consular association and corps from all around the world. Its fundamental goal is to bring up honorary consuls' responsibilities, statutes, rights, and securities to better standard and to convert them into reality in the normal life. A vast library of information is being assembled about each of us, but we don't know how this info has been collected, by whom and for what purpose. Our data is also being used to shape and to manipulate our perception without even realizing it. It is clearly seen nowadays that data is commercially for advertising, for marketing, and for profitable purposes. For this reason, we should develop a new roadmap for digital cooperation to find a way forward for honorary consuls. I would like to add, we should urge all member states to review honorary consuls' right at the diplomacy of regulatory frameworks and legislation on the development and use of digital technologies in modern diplomacy. We need a safe, equitable, and open digital future that does not infringe on privacy or dignity for honorary consuls. Your Excellency, as a Lady President, you had a big responsibility, not only in your country, but in all EU countries. We know you had a lot of experiences. Today, you will share some of them for the future of our diplomatic life. Thank you, Madam la President. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. It's great to hear from you. And I'm very happy you mentioned the roadmap for digital cooperation, as well as the fact that we need to address these issues. And I think we can touch on this today as well, addressing digital technology in diplomacy. Now, without further ado, let me pass it on to the driving force behind this event, the lady with so much stamina and such great charisma, Mrs. Gönül Eken, Honorable Gönül Eken, the chairwoman of a FICAC Women in Diplomacy Committee. Gönül, please go ahead.
Thank you very much for everyone. Welcome. Your Excellency, dear colleagues and distinguished participants. Today we are honored to host Her Excellency Kolinda Grabar-Kitarović as our guest speaker at our first FICAC's Women in Diplomacy Committee Summit 2021. As an NGO with economic special status recognized by the United Nations, FICAC endorses all 17 Sustainable Development Goals. To support goal number 5, gender equality, FICAC established the Women in Diplomacy Committee. Our committee's objective is to achieve an equal future by empowering all women and girls by giving them equal opportunities. To achieve this goal, we opened the dialogue via digital network and social media to around 91 countries representatives in FICAC to develop solutions and ideas to eliminate gender inequality, gender-based stereotypes, and workplace discrimination. Tapping into our honorary consul connections with Ministry of Foreign Affairs and embassies, we reach half of the 20,000 men and women honorary consuls that have been worldwide. If you ask, why is so much emphasis on honorary consuls? Almost all of them are business people and observe diplomatic relations by living in public diplomacy. Therefore, Women in Diplomacy Committees for Action started by collecting critical messages like unspoken rules, analyzing statements from the world-class female leaders, well-known diplomats, academicians, prominent governors, different cultures and professional lives. Through the Women Honorary Consuls, women play an essential role in politics and maintain stable and secure democracies. To this end, we created a project entitled Gender Responsive Policy in Diplomacy, led by dear Nesrin Aval. Our objectives: to ensure a woman-friendly working environment in the diplomatic class, establishing gender equality proposition, providing equal opportunities for working, and enhancing the leadership quality to encourage and sustain the women leaders community in diplomacy. Our committee members are incredibly talented, well-respected, successful businesswomen and diplomats. They are resourceful and already have great projects on the horizon to work towards goal number 5. Now it is time to share some striking points of view from Her Majesty Margherita of Romania, Her Royal Highness Princess Nisrin El Hashemi from London, His Eminence Cardinal Peter Turkson in the Vatican, from the UN Women and EU representatives, ministers from Israel, Georgia, ambassadors from Slovenia, United States, Turkey, St. Kitts and Nevis, Cuba, Nepal, Bangladesh, St. Lucia, consul generals from Croatia, Great Britain, United States, Japan, Argentina, and more. They all agree on these points. Gender equality is not a matter of just women or human rights. Excuse me. Gender equality is a matter of human rights. Capability in diplomacy does not depend on gender, but depends on individual. The employment of women is achieved through education, but not simply formal education. It should be understanding education. Visibility is another strategy that women especially should embrace. Women have given factor gives them the instinct to protect children and the environment. Women are not always weak, but when they become mothers, they need assistance supported by the government. Economically, the world loses an estimated 140 trillion euros in wealth because women do not participate fully in the labor market with unequal payment. It is very critical time not to be late to fixing the biased databases at the digitalization and artificial intelligence algorithms. Some countries have had women as head of governments. However, men are still more likely to be assigned high-profile ministers, while women tend to go to the social, cultural, or health portfolios. Here are some of messages showing the woman's status and rise of the social life from the grassroots to the glass ceiling. Now, Your Excellency, we would like to listen your views and experience. Thank you. Katya.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gönül, for giving us the setting for today's event and drawing up these really important issues which we will discuss today. I do hope that we have the Honorable Ms. Ivana Zerec, the Consul General of the Republic of Croatia for Turkey and the President of Istanbul Consular Corps with us, as she's scheduled to introduce our distinguished speaker today. And I would like to pass the floor to Ivana. Now, I've been alerted that she's had some difficulty connecting. Ivana, are you with us?
I'm here. I'm with you.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you, Katya. Thank you very much. Dear President Kitarović, dear Excellencies, I'm very honored to be part of this unique event today. Today, we welcome a great person who has played a prominent international political role, a person who has given inspiration to many diplomats, consuls, politicians, and especially women in those positions. Ms. Grabar-Kitarović, again, a warm welcome to you. We are honored and privileged to have you with us today and share your experiences with us. Well, most of our participants will know you very well. Therefore, let me just briefly resume your impressive CV. And we shall see from your CV important role you have played in promoting the role of women in public life. So Ms. Grabar-Kitarović was the first female president of the Republic of Croatia from 2015 to 2020. So she was the first woman to hold that office. She was from 2011 to 2014, Assistant Secretary General for Public Diplomacy at NATO. And she was the highest ranked woman in NATO. From 2008 to 2011, she was first Croatian female ambassador to Washington, to United States. From 2003 to 2008, she was the first Croatian female minister for Foreign Affairs and European integration. It was a very important period for Croatia because we were preparing for the membership with the European Union. Let me briefly introduce just part of education of Ms. Grabar-Kitarović. She completed doctoral studies at the University of Zagreb, and she's currently working on PhD thesis in international security studies. It's area with a very, very huge importance in diplomacy. She was a visiting scholar at Johns Hopkins University in Washington, D.C. in 2011. She was also Luksic Fellow in Senior Managers in Government Executive Program at the JFK School of Government at Harvard in 2009. And that we are all very proud of, she was a Fulbright Scholar on pre-doctoral research in international relations and security policy at George Washington University. So from the first hand, I can just tell you that during all the career, Ms. Grabar-Kitarović was playing really like a role model for us women diplomats. I'm personally very grateful to her for this role that and influence that she had on women diplomats in Croatia, but of course worldwide. And that's why I'm very happy that we managed to organize this webinar today and that Ms. Grabar-Kitarović can share all her experience today with us. So thank you very much for joining us today, Ms. Grabar-Kitarović.
Thank you very much, Ivana, and thank you very much again, Ms. Grabar-Kitarović, for joining. So welcome. Dobrodošli.
Hvala. Thank you very much, Honorable President and honorable members of FICAC, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me today to speak about this, for me, very important topic, gender perspectives and gender equality, my own experiences as a woman, both in the diplomatic service and in the political life. And I will reflect, of course, on other walks of life as well. I said a very important topic because what I believe Katja mentioned, and a lot of people forget in all of our societies, to repeat what Hillary Clinton once said, that women's rights are human rights. And when we talk about gender equality, and when we talk about overall attitudes about women in high positions, we often see that their human rights are not being respected. We often see, unfortunately, a lot of discrimination, even hate speech, which would otherwise outrightly be unacceptable were it directed towards anyone based on their ethnic, religious, or any other background. So still this type of misogyny of this relationship towards women, focusing on our female qualities or our female characteristics, is something that is not perceived as discrimination in our societies. And therefore, it is so important to underline the fact that, yes, indeed, women's rights are human rights, and we need to treat them as such. Today, I will speak a little bit more personally about my experiences, because you've had a chance to hear about my CV. And Ivana, thank you very much for your kind introduction. And thank you for being the driving force in organizing today's event. I really appreciate the opportunity that you, Mr. President, and all of you members of FICAC have given me today to speak on these important issues. So I will speak about the personal experiences, some formative experiences that I believe are very important, and then my experiences as I climbed through the professional diplomatic service of my own country, political experiences as a Minister of Foreign Affairs and European Integration, and most recently as President of Croatia, and my experiences within an international organization or alliance which is perceived to be still the domain of mostly men, a male domain that is perceived to be rather masculine, which is NATO. And let me begin with what I believe is the starting point for any of us, how our upbringing and our own life experiences, our successes and failures, keeping an open mind and dealing with prejudice, which doesn't always have to be prejudice of others, but we can also harbor prejudice ourselves. And we need to learn to deal with that, how it all shaped our perspectives and leadership styles. We obviously change and develop as circumstances change. Experiences shape us. I believe that we do become tougher with time, and that old saying, what doesn't kill you makes you strong, eventually holds true, but we need to be strong in all that. Our priorities shift, and we need to be able to adjust them to the changing landscape around us. And with time, our power, just like my own power, has become both personal and positional. So it arises from the position in government and diplomatic service or in business that we hold, but also it arises from the personal status that we have built for ourselves within societies and in dealing with other people and in treating them in the same way that we would like to be treated ourselves. There are many reasons why studying formative experiences and periods and learning from them in a thoughtful, strategic manner is important. And let me single out just 3 of them, because we often disregard this very important aspect of our lives. First, by studying our own early experiences, is very important for our own personal development. Our experiences provide us with an opportunity to recognize, use, understand, and manage our own emotions and motivations. And by understanding ourselves and our motivations, it helps us with our personal growth and in understanding our desires, our moods, fears, but also capacities and limitations. It also helps us manage our own expectations from our own life. We can understand and prioritize which goals are important and how to achieve them. Secondly, by understanding other people's experiences, it helps us in managing and improving our relations with others. Be that your colleagues, your team, your subordinates, or your superiors. It helps us to understand people emphatically and to understand other people's emotions, wants, needs, and motivations, and to be able to respond to them and to work effectively with others and manage conflict situations. But also, what's very important, it helps us in formulating policies. Because when you look at other people with empathy and you put yourself in other people's shoes and try to understand their positions, you become more inclusive and you develop wider policies and politics that are important, not just for yourself and your local communities, but also for your countries. And thirdly, what is very important, especially in the field of work that I do, is that understanding formative experiences is by all means consequential for geopolitical and geostrategic considerations, studies, risk assessment, and policy formulation. And I believe this is very important for you too. As you work in your respective receiving countries, you're expected to report on the situation that goes well beyond what you can read nowadays in the papers and the media. You need to be able to employ an analytical mind, and you need to be able to provide added value to what your Ministry of Foreign Affairs or your respective organization requires of you just to report on the situation. So whether responding to crisis or building alliances or setting out national defense strategies and positioning yourself in the world, one has to look at these aspects too. So what defines the person that you're communicating with? What defines the government, the country where you are? What defines your competitor, opponent, or adversary, and even your allies? and where do their values, visions, and strategies come from, what matters to them, what motivates them. So to develop your own strategy, you have to know the other, not just their strategies, but their deep-held emotions and values and what they actually stand for. So when I think back to who has had the greatest impact on my life, it always comes down to my parents. There are people of humble background who had barely managed to finish elementary school because they had to work from an early age, but whose wisdom and life experience is so much greater than most people that I have ever met. They taught me the value of hard work, excellence, ambition, modesty, honesty, integrity, respect, and treating others in the same way I would expect that others treat me. I don't remember my parents ever making an ugly comment about anyone else, regardless of their background. They never questioned the choices that I was making or people with whom I was associating. There was no hate speech at our home. And one of the elements that I believe, when we look at the current crisis, especially the migration crisis, and when I look at my parents and how open-minded they were and what a huge influence they have been on my own development, is that during the war in Bosnia and Herzegovina, they took in Bosniak Muslim refugees to help them, and they gave them temporary housing. My mother even built a small apartment in our yard. They gave them work, which was hard work, but the kind of work that my parents did. They gave them a paycheck and a seat at our dinner table. So they left the biggest impact in my life, and will always remain deeply grateful to them for all of their sacrifices and all of their wisdom. And also what became very important in my considerations of gender and looking at gender policies was proving myself to my father. He was a typical Croatian at the time who wanted a son. And when he got a girl, well, he decided that he had to make the best of it. And I realized that I not needed, but that I wanted to prove to him that I was of equal value. And that combined with the fact that all of my neighbors were boys with whom I played the so-called boys' games of soccer and hide and seek and climb trees, and whom I could not only outrun, but also, if need be, I could beat up sometimes. All that has instilled in me strong self-confidence and equality, this feeling of equality. And I never even thought of the fact that I was a girl and that I should be doing anything different than any of my peers. It never occurred to me that there were things that should be considered boys' games or girls' games. And I have raised my children in the same way, and I try to contribute to education and to influence the public to look at these aspects in the same way that we should not distinguish between gender roles. Admittedly, in my childhood, there were moments when I come home in the evening and I was all covered in mud from our games. And my mom would tell me, slightly annoyed, "You're a girl, you should be more responsible." And I would usually respond, "No, I'm not." But that part, you should be more responsible, somehow it did stick with me. And unfortunately, I would learn later in life and throughout my career that yes, indeed, women still have to work harder and prove that they're equally competent as men. And they have to put in a lot more effort in order to be taken as seriously. My mom did not want me to have the same kind of hard life that she had. And she realized that the way out for me, the opportunity that she never had herself, was to pursue an education. And education is incredibly important. Nurturing ambition with girls and education, encouraging girls that they can do anything, that they should go into STEM, which is today an area where the jobs of the future, well-paid jobs of the future are. This is what we all should be doing, both men and women. For me, education was my ticket into both the physical world and the world of possibilities. And it is the main reason for where I am here today. And it is for that reason that I have always promoted and will continue to promote and encourage education and ambition, not just with girls, but in young generations in general. This is why one of the reasons why, as president, I supported educational reform and started a program, Croatia Reads, at Croatian schools to encourage the habit of lifelong reading. So education is the single most important development tool for any individual, community, nation, and for the global community. It is also a most powerful weapon against inequality, prejudice, hate, and extremism of any kind that is at the root, at the cause of most of the threats to our security and the problems that the world is experiencing. And of course, education is one of those bridging elements in the 17 Sustainable Development Goals that FICAC very rightly supports as well and works towards its implementation. I have also encountered a lot of prejudice in my life, in particular in my early life, mostly related to the rural area where I come from. Of course, there was a lot of gender prejudice as well, but my early experiences, as I said, I did not even perceive myself as a girl, but were experiences from going to high school in Rijeka, where although I could speak the standard Croatian language, other children from the same neighborhoods were laughed at because they spoke in a dialect, or because they had different goals and values than some of the children who came from the city. Did that sting at first? Of course it did. However, I was self-confident enough to realize, to stop caring about that. I knew what I wanted, to travel the world. And I knew what I had to do, study and work hard. And I was determined to show everyone I could do what I set out to do. I just did not know at the time that the realization of that dream would go far beyond my wildest imagination. Now, the president of Liberia said recently that if your dreams do not scare you, they're not big enough. And I think this is the message that we as professionals who have made it in our careers, in our professional service, have to convey to the younger generations, to tell them to dream big, to have big ambitions. And in addition to that, we have the responsibility also for mentoring and for helping them in their careers so that ultimately they can achieve their goals. Because it's very, very difficult to do that if you do not have the support of your environment. And I was so happy to have the support of my family in my early life, of my husband later on, and a lot of wonderful people who later came into my life. So as I said, there was a lot of gender prejudice as well. And by the way, those bikini photos that you can find online, I'm sorry to say so, they're not mine. They're just a vehicle, just another way how they will try to reduce a woman to a frivolous, inconsequential, unimportant object. For instance, shortly before my first election as president, somebody came up with a so-called Plan Barbie. It was full of nonsense and everybody knew that. But the point was to frame the whole discussion with the word Barbie and re-feminize again a presidential candidate who was coming from NATO and was thus perceived as having made it in this typically male domain. I will talk about a little bit more about my presidential experiences later. So let me just stress at this point that it takes patience and perseverance to endure. And again, support from others does really help. So looking at very particular experiences, of course, that gender component started from the very early stages. I transferred from the Ministry of Science and Technology to Foreign Ministry in early 1993. I became a professional diplomat and I served in my country's professional diplomatic service until 2003 when I was elected to parliament, and then became a Minister of European Integration and then Minister of Foreign Affairs and European Integration. So what would happen at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, for instance? There were two of us in the Deputy Minister's office, a male and a female, myself. We were of equal rank, as we were told, and later it was institutionalized. Of course, I was the one who was always confused for a secretary, personal assistant, even though at the time we did not have one. It was just the two of us. It was the beginning of Croatia's foreign service, so we were learning a lot and we were building a lot. I was confused for a secretary even in meetings with foreign delegations, and they would place me at the end of the table, although they had been notified that at the time I was in the rank of a diplomatic counselor. One of the aspects that at the time hurt me personally is the way that my boss, and sometimes, you know, in life you remember people who were good to you, but the people whom you learn from most are those who actually were not, and who were horrible bosses. The experience that they instill in you is, this is not what I want to become. I want to be different, and I want to help and encourage people. So he was very much afraid of rumors that would spread about the two of us. I was 23, 24 years old at the time, a female. So I was not allowed to travel with him. And people throughout my career afterwards, as I was climbing through the diplomatic service, did not perceive that as the result of my ambition, of my efforts, of the education that I continued alongside with a professional service. But they were always looking for a male sponsor, you know, who is the person who's pushing her, who put her into that position, who promoted her into that particular role, etc. My husband decided that he would be a stay-at-home father already at the time when I was posted to Ottawa to our embassy there, first as a counselor and then was promoted to minister counselor. First of all, you know, whenever we would go to any reception, and that was back in 1997, 98, 99, so there was no social media. People could not look at your profile before they met you. So when we would come to a diplomatic reception, people would automatically extend their hand to him, to my husband, being a male. And of course, you know, he's the boss, but he would not give his hand back, but he would say, no, actually, she is the diplomat and I am the spouse. So that was a very nice thing of him to do. But later on, you know, throughout my career, the way that people tried to hurt me and hurt my career, especially when I was president, was by underlining that I was a horrible mother, that I was a horrible wife, always posing questions, how do you balance your personal and professional life? Although I actually did incredible personal sacrifices to be able to be there for my children, I practically did not have a personal life. They would always, there was this football supporters team who came up with this slogan that they were putting up in stadiums, Yakov, hold on, you know, we're with you. Although, again, it was his choice to stay at home and to be stay-at-home dad. And he now works because their children are grown up, 18 and 20 years old, respectively. But that was, you know, the blame and actually, unfortunately, the guilt that you feel as a woman that you're not being sufficient as a mother because you're spending away from home. Unfortunately, this is what society does to you. And this is what young women have to learn with. But there was another aspect that came when I was in Ottawa, and that sort of prompted my own political engagement as a result of adversity and being unhappy with the political circumstances in Croatia. At the time, in 2000, we had a change of government. I became pregnant. However, I went to work every single day. But for reasons of pure bigotry, as I was labeled to be this person's, the sponsorship that I mentioned earlier, that I bear sort of a stamp on my back that this person has promoted me to where I was at the time. So they asked me to return to Croatia. I was 7 months pregnant. It became a difficult pregnancy with almost preeclampsia. And when I came back to Croatia, I actually ended up in hospital for the rest of the pregnancy. I did not fight it at the time because the life of my child, the life of the baby that I was carrying was before everything else. So I came back, I applied for my Fulbright scholarship. I became a Fulbright scholar. I had my second baby in the time. So in a way, I was lucky that the time fitted in the way that after having pursued my career, having received my master's degree, I now had 2 children. And then I got politically engaged as, again, if you're not happy with the situation that you live in and the political circumstances, do something about it, start changing it one step at a time. And my experience as a foreign minister, Minister of European Integration and Foreign Affairs, was also very interesting in that gender aspect as well. I was appointed minister when my baby, Luca, was 6 months old. And one of the things that I told the prime minister who asked me to take this position, I said, look, this isn't for any ideological issues, but for purely scientific issues that prove that breastfeeding is best for the baby in terms of physical and psychological development, building of the immunity system as well. So my only condition is that you make it possible for me to continue to breastfeed my baby until the time that he becomes disinterested in that. And he happily said yes. The big disappointment at the time was that those who attacked me most at the time in Croatia were actually women, and women who called themselves feminists. And this is why I often say, when people ask me, do you consider yourself feminist? I say no. First of all, I don't label myself. And secondly, unfortunately, there are a lot of false feminists who actually look at and promote a completely different ideological agenda rather than the gender rights and gender equality agenda. So literally, some of those women told me either stay home and breastfeed or stop breastfeeding, denying me that right that we talk about so much, the right to balance family life and professional, political, business, or any other career. As Minister of Foreign Affairs, I have to say that other than a couple of countries, I did not feel any prejudice towards me. At the time, I would even say that the Croatian society was a lot more forthcoming towards women. But it was in the past few years, and in particular, when I became president, that the situation unfortunately escalated. I think it followed also the case of Hillary Clinton in the United States, where she was clearly laughed at for some of the female characteristics and some of the feminine aspects, the pitch of her voice, her clothes, her hairstyle, etc. So she was unduly and unproportionately and totally unacceptably ridiculed for being a woman. So when I was elected president, keeping my promise to be with the people, to be the voice of the people, was very important to me. Lots of it was labeled populism by the media, although there is huge difference between populism and approach, that is being with the people, and populism in substance, which means manipulating with the base emotions of the population to ensure personal and political gain. In addition to the usual frustration that politicians, especially female, face, such as misogynist sensationalism, fake news, trolls, misinterpretation, and being taken out of context, I also faced frustration with my positional power, or rather with the lack of executive power and the limitations I had to carry out some of the policies that I promoted, in contrast to huge expectations of the public. And I would have loved to make a difference in some of the aspects and areas such as school reform, but also looking at what media does, keeping their freedom, but instilling some sort of ethics when they deal with every single individual, and to verify the news before they publish, etc., etc. I mentioned populism, but there was also another aspect that they use is estradization of policies. And it was, yes, again, I like to stay with people, and in my personal approach to others, I'm always very open, very warm. I often embrace my colleagues, and they embrace me, or sometimes they are the ones who start embracing, and I respond. We kiss on the cheeks, respecting the traditions and the cultures of wherever I am. And of course, I'm very well known for cheering for a national team during the championships in Russia. And however, a lot of that estradization was due to the way that the media treated me, the way that they look everywhere I went. The first news was always, this is what she was wearing. She looked like Melania Trump or whoever at the, or she was copying Melania Trump with this particular dress. My hairstyle, my weight, it all became important to them. So they were putting focus on that and not on the substance. Secondly, when it comes to the substance, they would take things out of context, and they would, from this Barbie position or a dumb blonde position, they would look at whatever I said and try to find anything that was wrong, or they thought it was wrong, to ridicule me and to present me. Although I was the most educated of all of the Croatian presidents, I don't have my doctorate yet, but it's pending. And you've heard to how many different schools I went. Nevertheless, I was always treated as the least intelligent of them all, and incompetent, because she has this particular attitude. So my problem was that I was very much respected abroad, but what I was looking at home was not only discrimination, but really putting down and diminishing my capabilities and capacities. So it was, definitely I was looked at as women. Unfortunately, are still looked through a different pair of spectacles, a different pair of lenses that seem to distort the media and the public vision by sharpening the physical features and blurring the professional capacities and the substance of what we talk. For instance, there were a lot of cartoons where I was portrayed like Jane from Tarzan movies, although I would never wear the kind of clothes that they would portray me wearing in those cartoons. They would, for instance, when President Trump came to power, I said, obviously, Croatia is not going to be one of his priorities. We have to work hard to put on the table the agenda, the issues that we want to see resolved. And papers commented, what a dumb thing to say. She said that Croatia would be shaping American foreign policy. And it's a complete distortion of the facts. And it just became one of the things that they were taking for granted, and that everybody started doing. However, of course, looking on the other side, when you look at the advantages of being a woman in the diplomatic service and politics, and in boardrooms where there aren't a lot of women, then you have certain advantages. Just the fact that you can be feminine and that you're able to wear the color red or bright pink can help you able to stick out of the crowd, to be noticed and to be remembered more easily. And I did have that advantage, along with what I said, a very open-minded and easy approach toward everyone else, engaging in conversations and establishing these networks. So a lot of people today ask whether there is a feminine type of leadership. I don't think so, but there are feminine qualities and feminine or female perspectives. It is true. It has been scientifically proven that women tend to be more inclusive, that they tend to be have more empathy, and they tend to put the interest of the community before their own interests. Rather than vice versa, so that sort of distinguishes women and men. And it's especially important in areas of conflict situations where you're trying to build a peace process. Again, with women included in the peace process, you can raise the chances of it being successful. I just talked about it yesterday during an A5 Adriatic US Charter conference on the implementation of the Resolution 1325, which looks at women in armed conflict not just as victims, but as agents of change, and provides for empowerment of women. And we talked about the implementation and what we have done in order to do it. And I made two comments, which I think are very important when it comes to this female perspective that could help long term. Those are, first of all, peace processes where even we as international mediators who provide good offices tend to exclude women because we look at them as sort of distractors, even disruptors, if they insist on their rights. And you look at the Afghanistan peace process right now. So women's rights are obviously a major component of the whole process, but how many women are actually included in the process? So in order to quickly close the peace process and come up with an agreement, we exclude women, but then it's actually detrimental to the long-term success of the process. I'm happy to say that in Croatia, a number of women were included in our reconciliation process, and I think that was one of the very important preconditions for its success, and why we were able to transform from a problem country to a country that solves and tries to resolve problems in our own neighborhood, but also globally as well. And the second is, the commitment of the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, especially has committed to appoint more women, and he has appointed more women in the UN structures. But again, when it comes to peace processes and mediators in conflict situations, it's mostly men who get appointed, because we always worry about how the other side will react in terms of their cultural or religious thinking to a woman who leads the peace process. And of course, this isn't about women's rights. This is about universal rights. It's not about cultural rights or religious rights. It's about universal rights that everybody is entitled. So I never felt in any way inferior to men, and never ever doubted, or as a matter of fact, never even thought about the fact that I am a woman and that thus I should be treated in a different way. However, I have always felt this moral obligation that, as sort of a trailblazer myself, having navigated so many glass labyrinths and pushed up so many glass ceilings, I had a duty to use my personal and positional power to pursue and promote gender equality. So it has always been both a major policy component of any position that I held, Although I have to say women have to tread carefully that line in order not to be perceived as aggressively pursuing a self-serving principle. They will often tell you, you push for women's rights because it concerns you, which is not true. Again, this isn't about me. I can take it personally, but I wonder what kind of precedents we're setting for other girls and women and for relations in our society. And it has also been a matter of activism and advocacy for me. There were really numerous initiatives that I started as Minister of Foreign Affairs that brought women from Afghanistan and Iraq for visits to Croatia to exchange experience with women in both the public and NGO sector who had actively participated in our own reconciliation process. While working at NATO, and I must say it's one of the most collaborative environments where I worked and where the gender prejudice that I felt was perhaps least, but still gender was a big component of what I did. On my many visits to Afghanistan, I always made sure to include local women, from those in position of relative power to those working individually. Through virtual Silk Road Afghanistan program, we were introducing broadband internet that provided opportunities for women to pursue education and work online. And of course, economic empowerment of women had a true snowball effect. I also fought hard for and would not give up until NATO created a special position of gender advisor in the rank of the general officer with the ISAF command. I will continue to work on these issues. I have done a lot with the UN. On the internal scene in Croatia, again, it was always a lot more sensitive for not trying to bring about the counter effects, to look at that as a self-serving principle. But I tried to do whatever I could personally with mentoring, with guiding and leading women, responding to their queries. Still today, I respond to their emails and try to encourage them. I get a lot of these questions, not just from Croatia, but from the rest of the world as well. And finally, how this COVID pandemic has affected the position of women. Unfortunately, I would say that it has greatly exacerbated the situation for most women in the world, not just for those of us who have been sort of contained to Zoom conferences and cannot work in person. And I would love to be meeting with all of you right now in person rather than online, where I cannot see all of your faces and share this personal space with you. But it has especially been hard on women who were suffering from inequality, low socioeconomic circumstances, and violence against women. So women have been in the front line of fighting and containing the pandemic as healthcare workers, as humanitarian responders. Women as caretakers in families of those family members who cannot take care of themselves, often children who could not go to schools and to kindergartens. Women had to choose to stay at home with them and perhaps even quit their jobs. The level of domestic violence against women has increased during the pandemic. And of course, we've seen lots of financing for donor assistance, but also financing for women's micro and small and medium-sized enterprises, which are especially important in low and medium income countries. So it's our responsibility, again, as professionals, not just as women, us women, but men as well, because it's ultimately the men who in general and in majority take decisions in most of our countries. It is our responsibility to promote gender equality as human rights agenda, but also not just the moral, but a wise thing to do. Because we know if women are included, then it affects not just the equality, the sense of equality, but it also affects the economic development, the GDP, the prosperity of any country. And that goes equally for developed and underdeveloped countries, for all of our societies. So in closing, let me, and looking forward to your questions that you will pose through our discussion, let me encourage all of you to pursue your personal goals and aspirations, but also to do whatever you can in order to make it possible for others, in particular girls and women, to do so as well, because everybody deserves an equal chance. But without the involvement of all of us, without the involvement of society, it's not going to happen. This is our personal and professional responsibility. This is our moral duty. And I think this is what ultimately, at the end of the day, will make us happy, that we have made a difference in other people's lives. And this road that we're paving for our daughters, for the girls who will come after us and who will hopefully inherit a bit of an easier situation for them to be able to come to an equal standing in diplomacy, in politics, and in business and the boardrooms around the world. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Really thank you for the personal touch, for, I think, highlighting some crucial moments in your life of how society perceives women with such an astounding career. And for also talking about your motivations, some of your motivations in private. I think these are very private moments for a lot of us. And I think there's a lot of women on this call today that can very much relate and have somewhere faced that situation in their lives. Having said that, I think at the beginning you mentioned that empathy is one of your guiding principles of how you work and how you went through your professional life. But that I have no doubt that you have encountered people that kind of lack this capacity, and people that are more motivated by power or by personal gain. I was wondering, how do you then deal with that in a professional situation? And there's a lot of this behavior is what turns people away from politics, especially women, especially young girls. And how do we encourage women to go into diplomacy and politics where we know that they're underrepresented, specifically at the leadership levels?
Yes, this is a very good question. You know, even now, now that one of the roles, one of the functions that I hold is an independent member of the International Olympic Committee. And you've probably have heard of the situation where the president of the Tokyo Organizing Committee resigned recently for the remarks that he made about women. He said, you know, very lightheartedly, women talk too much. They should not be included in the boardrooms. He did not want to resign. He did apologize, but did not want to resign. However, within days or a couple of weeks, maybe, he was forced to resign, and a woman, former Minister of Sports, was appointed in his position. There is also, you know, what you mentioned, that women are discouraged by what they see. And a lot of women have asked me that they noticed the way that men react around the table when a woman speaks, because of the different tone and pitch of the voice and everything else, and whether they should act in a different way. And I always said, no, you don't have to look like a man or talk like a man in order to be taken as seriously as a man. It is your right to femininity, and we actually have to blaze that trail and let men and all people realize that, yes, these are persons who wear different clothes and look a little bit different from us, but they're part of the same team. You know, one of the things that would happen to me as president was also, they would tell me, you have too many women around you. And I was just stunned, because about 40, maybe at times 50% of my colleagues that I appointed were women. And for me, it was, first of all, promoting women. As when, you look at appointments in government, most prime ministers look at men, and when they realize that they don't have enough women on the list, they will think about women and, we have to appoint a few women, and then they will desperately search for a few names whom they can put on the list, but always juggling, this man, who do we actually replace in this list? And I was appointing people. I do want to encourage women, and in our diplomatic service, I wish I just could have appointed a lot more of them, but because of the sacrifices that husbands have to make, a lot of them decide not to join the diplomatic service if the ministry cannot guarantee that the husband will have a job as well. And it has a lot to do with prejudice. And on the other hand, I appointed professionals. So I did not even know how to respond to that comment. There are too many women around you. What does that mean? Does that mean that we're not competent enough, or that it looks like a house, a kitchen, or that it looks like a handpan? So the question was just so ludicrous that sometimes it's really difficult to come up with arguments to counter that.
I want to note that you've held a very high level position, which you also mentioned at the beginning, in NATO. And that is, if I may put it mildly, also known as pretty much a boys' club, isn't it? If I could put it very intimately between us in the small group. And how far do you think we are from actually having a Secretary General of NATO that is a woman, or having the head of UN that is a woman? I'm very happy to hear that there's a lot of women being appointed to senior management, maybe even upper leadership positions. But where are those heads of state? And I remember when my organization, CEP, organized the 3Cs Summit in Ljubljana, and you were there in 2019 as a president. There were 9 people on stage, out of which there were 3 women. It's great that there were 3 women, but there were only 3. And it is not a half. We're far from that. So where do you think we are in the, us in leadership roles?
As I mentioned, for me, NATO was one of the more collaborative environments where I worked, and I actually was more discriminated as a civilian than I was as a woman. There was always a lot of respect, especially in theater of operations in Afghanistan, not just by the military there, but by Afghans themselves, by my Afghan interlocutors. And I never felt that I was discriminated as a woman in any way. But there were these discriminatory aspects. You mentioned NATO as the boys' club. I remember a situation when we were changing the area, or redecorating the area where the Secretary General would hold his press conferences. So we asked for a new lectern to be designed, and we looked at the designs, and the spokesperson was a woman. I was head of public diplomacy as a woman. The deputy spokesperson was a woman. So there are 3 of us women talking to this male architect who shows us the lectern that we don't like. Something with a sword, and we tried to say, look, NATO is wrongly perceived as a military alliance. We're also a political alliance, an alliance of values, etc. And he quips back, but the sword is the symbol of masculinity. So the misconception, the preconception that he came with, unfortunately, is what most people think. And although there are, I think, about 40% of women on NATO international civilian staff, there are still not too many women in leadership positions. It's a valid and good question when we'll have a NATO or UN female Secretary General. I don't know. I hope we do have soon. With respect to UN, I believe that Secretary General Guterres is running again. So it's among us in this close circle, I think it's safe to assume that he will be reelected. and that perhaps in 5 years or 4 or 5 years, we can look at a potential female candidate who will run for the position. We remember last time when several women ran for the position who were equally educated and competent as Secretary Guterres, but most of them didn't have much of a chance. They encountered a lot of resistance. Now with NATO, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe NATO will even go first before the UN with a female candidate. Let's hope so. And you've mentioned 3 women who were present in Slovenia. As a matter of fact, I think that in addition to Angela Merkel, we were the only elected female heads of state or government in Europe. So that was actually quite a success, that 3 out of 9 members of that conference were women.
Yeah, actually, thank you for pointing that out. I didn't even realize that. So it's a great to have you there on top of that. I want to touch on another topic, if I may, and it's slightly broader. And I think in your words today, you alluded to it, and it's called digital diplomacy. I would really like to have your thoughts on that, because it's, on one hand, it does enable to connect you and look at us here today, wonderful group across different continents. However, as you already spoke, it also can be quite destructive. And in that sense, has it enabled better communication? Yes, it has, but has it also dropped our level of communication to an extent? And how does that impact on women, but more broadly on politics?
Oh, absolutely. It has affected every single walk of life. This COVID pandemic has actually accelerated processes that had been decades in the making. With respect to digitalization mostly, and that affects education, that affects telemedicine, but it also affects the way that we do work. So for me, after I stepped down as president, and then the COVID pandemic hit. The first few weeks were actually unbearable. I didn't know what to do with myself. I wanted to be among people. I wanted to talk to people. I wanted to socialize. It's been more than a year, and I still haven't gotten used to these Zoom conferences, because when I speak and I look at the screen, first of all, I hate seeing my own picture on the screen. It feels like talking to a mirror. I would prefer to see your faces, to see where I'm going with this conversation, whether you're bored or you're interested, to get some kind of physical, visual feedback, and of course to be able, after this meeting, to socialize with all of you, to have a cup of coffee, to have conversations, to exchange our business cards, stay in touch, work together on different programs. And this is all made impossible by this Zoom connectivity, where even there's a coffee break, you go to your own kitchen and you make your own coffee and you drink it alone. So it has definitely desocialized all of us. It has robbed us of opportunities for networking and for further professional career development as well. Because in meeting people around the world, you hear of different opportunities, you present yourself, you perhaps get a better job offer than you currently hold, that you can think about in the future when your posting is over. What we have seen is also that the socioeconomic differences have become greater, both within societies and among societies. If you look at the United States here, and the same is in Croatia, the quality of education depended a lot on the socioeconomic background. According to research in Croatia, children who come from families of lower socioeconomic backgrounds start to lag behind other children as of 3rd grade, because the program is tough. Their parents are not educated enough to help them with the school program, nor do they have enough money to pay for instruction for them. And now this is compounded by the fact that everything has to be online. And most of these families of lower socioeconomic background have perhaps one digital device per family that they have to share between maybe multiple children, and mothers and fathers who also have to work, that it depends on connectivity, whether you have broadband internet or not. I've had a lot of conferences, Zoom conferences, that were interrupted because the internet connection was not stable enough. So some speakers were just cut off in the process and were not able to log in again. The quality of digital devices, the quality of programming, it is all affecting, and I believe that will just greatly increase these differences that we have, as I said, both within societies and among societies, among those countries who had developed digitally quite well before the pandemic and were ready for online schooling, work, etc., and those countries who have not. Now, I'm currently in Washington, D.C. at the Stein Institute of Politics and Policy. I'm one of the very few people who comes to the office and who works on campus. Most people stay home, so it has affected also the way that people do. We have all become a little bit lazy sometimes. We don't want to get out of the house, take a shower, get dressed, and go to work. We prefer to stay at home. And then you see sometimes when you're communicating with people that they don't even turn their video on, which means that they're somewhere relaxing in a lounge chair or doing something else as they're trying to talk to you and being distracted. So yes, this has very much affected the way that we work. I'm glad that on the one hand, we did have an opportunity to test digital technology, but I can't wait for the time when we go back to in-person meeting and where the Zoom connectivity, the internet connectivity becomes just another tool to promote what we're doing and where we're meeting, and perhaps allow people from distant parts of the world to come in, but where we basically re-socialize again and go back to the old habits of making networks, of connecting, and of showing respect personally towards each other.
I have to say that I really cannot wait for that too, and that we would be able to host you for coffee, as you mentioned, or a drink somewhere. You have, at the beginning, we saw so many firsts in your life professionally, as a woman, and today is another first as a distinguished speaker at the FICAC, as we're and hopefully not the last. Thank you so much. I have so many other questions that we would want to touch on, but I think we are slowly running out of time, and I would really like to have the opportunity for the Secretary General of FICAC, the Honorable Nikos Magaropoulos, to take over and thank you and do the closing remarks of this event. So thank you very much, Your Excellency. It's been great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. A really inspiring speech and a very interesting discussion with Ms. Gersak, whom I also want to thank. I would like to ask the President of FICAC, the Honorable Aykute Ken, to take the stage and present, even if virtually, the commemorative FICAC medal to Her Excellency Grabar-Kitarović. Mr. President.
Yes, thank you very much. Madam President, we had a very good speech. Thank you very much. In the beginning, you say everything comes from the family. It is true. The mom or dad can drive you on the good side or on the bad side. But you are a powerful lady. Thank you very much. We would like to present you this our FICAC award. Unfortunately, I cannot give you hand by hand, but I will send to my dear friend Ivana, and she will bring or she will send to Croatia. Thank you very much again. I hope we'll have another time. We will meet. You will meet. Maybe we'll come to visit Croatia, because Croatia is one of our members. So thank you very much, and probably see you in Croatia. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. It was an honor to participate in today's event. I wish I could come to Istanbul sometime soon to get the plaque myself from you. This was a wonderful opportunity to discuss this again. I so hope that we will have a chance to do that in the near future. I thank you all for your kind attention, and I wish you a lot of success in your professional careers and in your personal life. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. But before we move to the closing, I would like to invite the Vice President of FICAC, the Honorable Kostas Lefkaritis, to deliver the vote of thanks. Do we have the Vice President with us?
Yes. Can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Yes, we can hear you. You have muted your microphone by mistake. Please unmute it.
Sorry.
Yes.
All right. Madam President, I'm sorry for this distraction. I'm not good in technology anyway. But please accept not a vote of thanks, but a vote of appreciation on behalf of the World Federation of Consuls. Your inspiring and aspiring speech, we all believe that gave us a lot to think of about women in diplomacy and how to work on. I'm coming from a country, Cyprus, where President Anastasiadis appointed in the 12-man cabinet 3 women in ministerial positions, young women, very vigorous and very well appreciated. That gives a lot to think that women in diplomacy are in an upcoming way, but at the same time, they have to face a lot of unexpected experiences that I believe truly that by having the example of your good self that have passed through so many obstacles, as you said, it will go on a positive line. Thank you very much once again from the World Federation of Consuls for sharing with us all your experiences that will be a lighting line towards women in diplomacy. Once again, thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you for your kind.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, excellencies, this brings our first virtual meeting to a close. Thank you all for your participation. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary General. Thank you, President. All the best.
All the best.
Very well conducted. Bar, how are you? I'm Dr. Beg here.
Congratulations, FICAC. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much.
Merci.
Thank you and congratulations, FICAC.
Good to see you all.
From
Honorable Secretary General, very well conducted.
Très, très, très intéressant. Merci beaucoup.
Merci.
Merci.
Very inspiring. Very inspiring. Thank you all. Thank you, Your Excellency.
Thank you from Bangladesh.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all of these beautiful women.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you very much.
So much and right.
Most appreciated.
Thank you very much and congratulations.
Hi, Patrick.
Thank you and goodbye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Mr. Babe, how are you?
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Oh, very, very much.
Philippines.
Thank you.
Dr. Babe, how are you?
Very fine. Nice to see you after a long time.
I know. When are you coming here?
How are you?
I'm dying to come. Let COVID permit me.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Blessings from Santo Domingo. Regards to
thank you.
everybody.
Hello
Thank you.
there. From
Yeah, congratulations to
Sonia.
FICAC.
Sonia, how are
Oh,
you?
Gonul, nice to see you.
Nice to see you,
It was
Sonia.
Nice.
regards to everybody. It was excellent. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Gonul and FICAC. Thank you.
Greetings from Sri Lanka.
Nice to have you with us.
Thank you very much from Israel.
And greetings.
Thank you very much.
How is Dr. Patrick? Everything okay?
Everything okay?
God
Thank
bless
you. And
Thank
greetings.
Thank you.
Hello
Was
from
very
Mali.
inspiring. Thank you very
Greetings
much.
from Uganda.
Was inspiring and
Greetings from
beautiful. Congratulations.
Okay, thank you,
Blessings.
everybody. Thank you,
Greetings
everybody.
from Uganda, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
How
Thank
is,
you.
how is the
Bangladesh.
how is the COVID position in Turkey, Istanbul?
How are you, Ganju?
Fine, thank you very much. It's nice to see everybody.
Very nice to
talk
see you
everybody.
after a long, long time. Please stay in
Yes.
touch.
Ganju,
Certainly, certainly.
greetings again, Ganju.
There is a-
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes. Hopefully
Okay,
everything
thanks
will be okay by
everyone.
next year.
I see
Greetings from Kampala in
faces.
Uganda. Bye-bye.
FICAC. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you. God bless you all. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
God
Bye-bye.
bless you too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Amiruzaman.
Okay, thank you, Papa.
Bye, Patrick.
Hello.
Patrice.
Patrice.
আমাদের
Come on,
প্রেসিডেন্ট
Patrice. Kanju bhai, be safe, because Delhi is very affected to COVID.
Yes, yes,
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
Kanju bhai,
Very,
Very bad.
How
Patrice, Patrice, how are you?
is India? How bad is India?
Patrice,
What's
how are
India is
you?
very bad at the moment. Very, very bad.
How are you? So try to be safe, Kanju bhai.
Yes, yes, certainly. We are taking care.
We will
but-
soon have another meeting. Goodbye, all. Goodbye.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
thank you. Bye. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, everybody. Bye.
Bye, Mary. Bye-bye.
Patrick, I would like
I'm glad you are on.
Nias,
Hi, President.
Yeah.
Mr. President, how are you? Thank you, Mr. President and Gonul, for wonderful program. We really, all the women, I think, inspired by her speech. It was fantastic.
Thank you.
Yes, yes.